Hi, everybody, and welcome. We'll be getting started here in just a minute while we wait for some folks to be joining us here as we go. So thank you so much. Hang tight, and we will be getting started in just one moment. Thanks.
Hey, Eric, you want to do a quick sound check?
And just one more minute, guys. We still got some folks filing in. So thanks so much. And probably getting started in about a minute, 2 minutes. We'll go from there. Thank you. All right. Well, cool, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. For those of you out our way, I know it's a rainy Thursday. We're really starting to kind of look like some fall here. But either way, I know that this is a busy time of year as many of us are looking at kind of shifting gears a little bit, either from, the summer busy season and getting things back on track and closing up for year end, or for those of you that are maybe in some southern states or out west that are still kind of humming along here as we go. But either way, much appreciated. Thank you for taking the time for today's webinar. So for the next half hour or so, we will be talking about a few things. Number one, we're going to talk about Safety HQ a little bit. That is one of the big requests we've had from those that are signed up for the webinar. They want to learn a little bit more about what Safety HQ can offer and how it does offer those items. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. And then we're going to be also talking about OSHA best practices, safety best practices, and key updates here, right? So I know we have a lot of changes going on, especially with a presidential election and things like that, and what that may or may not mean for OSHA. We will have some updates for those things as we go forward in coming webinars and updates from there. But the updates and things that I want to start with you guys from a whole is some recent OSHA fines and major occurrences over the last couple of months and things like that too. And there are some things, I'm going to point out a couple of examples. I'm not going to get into a ton of names and things like that, but I'm going to start just with a couple of numbers for you. So number one is 485,580. That is the initial fine for a New Jersey water tower painting contractor that was popped for a major violation. We're talking $451,694. That is for a Boston waterproofing company. We are also talking $394,083. That would be out in Connecticut from a trench collapse. I can go on and on. Most of these guys, it doesn't take you very far to get into the fact that most of these are 6+ figure fines, right? And obviously, I would hope, you guys have already taken step one as far as joining this webinar, exploring a little bit more about safety as a whole. Step one is being aware. I would imagine, and I don't, I've looked at each one of these cases in particular. We have more data on these as we go, but one of the key indicators that you guys will see is willful and consistent or repeat offenses of OSHA fines or issuances that we have from there. So if you guys are sitting on this call and you guys have never had an OSHA violation whatsoever, then you guys are in great shape. You're taking the right steps. You're in here. You're learning more. That's probably honestly the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? Where you're going to get hit with the biggest and largest fines is repeat offenders and what they call willful offenders as well too. So by taking the time to learn more and actually try and make changes and be aware of how we can prevent injuries, accidents, things like that, that's step one, guys. I mean, it really is that simple. I always think of the example too of, like, I think it was in Freakonomics, if you guys are familiar with that book. They talk about babies and the ability, like parents reading baby books and buying baby books and the likelihood of their child to, have a more successful high school, college, whatever career that they might have and stay out of jail. There's really no correlation between the books and the parent themselves. It is all about the people, and in this case, the companies that are willfully and intentionally trying to make sure that their team is safe. If you are actively taking measures to prevent that, that's half the battle, right? Some of that can be solved with something like a safety HQ, right? That is really beneficial, even if you are not the tightest and most buttoned up in many situations. The fact that you have a safety software, or if you have safety practices in place and you can show evidence of those items, is going to be, it is going to take you leaps and bounds as far as avoiding some major penalties, and maybe penalties as a whole. In many cases, and this is not exact, each OSHA compliance division is different, each state is different, what have you, and obviously each incident is different. But taking the time and actually putting processes and procedures in place to prevent injuries, accidents, to be mindful of hazards on job sites, things along those lines, that's your biggest battle, right? If you guys are doing something along those lines, you've already taken a big chunk of that piece out. Now, what you guys might see, if you guys look at, some of the largest fines, and we'll have some more information in coming webinars for you as well too, but trenches, number one, obviously you'll see that in almost every OSHA report that you're going to get, whether it be on a quarterly, monthly, yearly basis. For those of you that work road construction or work similar to that, you will have the ability, you will be exposed to any and all and probably additional discretion and requirements from OSHA, right? And that has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you guys are just in proximity to visibility and to the road, right? Trench construction is exceptionally dangerous. That is part of the process as well too. Many of the large fines and items that you'll see involve a trench collapse in one way, shape, or form, not using a trench box, teams not being trained appropriately. So if you guys are doing any kind of utility or heavy highway construction, just keep in mind, you guys are likely going to be at a higher risk, not only because of the work that you do, but simply because of your exposure. That goes with major projects in major urban areas and things like that too. If you are working in some of these areas, I can tell you time and time and again, there are a number of folks that get hit with OSHA violations, fines, inspections, what have you, just simply because, and I don't want to use the word convenience, but simply because you're there, right? I mean, in a situation where you're working in somewhere that's a little bit more remote with a little bit less detail, well, it's going to be a little bit more, it's going to be a little bit more hidden away. There is going to be less exposure on you as a whole. So number one, if you guys are working in some of those areas that have a lot of exposure, you need to 100% make sure you're buttoned up. That goes for everybody as well, right? I mean, that's not to say you can't get a major fine if you're working in the backwoods of XYZ area or what have you, but just keep in mind, you're going to see the biggest items every time are going to be that. You'll also see a lot related to heat. I know we're kind of getting into the colder season as a whole, which brings up a lot of its own issues as a whole. OSHA typically has not gotten into as much from the cold prevention as much as, say, heat stress and heat awareness, and I think that has to do with the seasonality of construction as well. But being mindful of your season, your work conditions, and your work location are all going to be critical as you craft and tighten up your safety measures and practices. Something that applies to everyone, or at least most people for the most part too, is fall protection, right? If you guys see a major fine, a 6-figure, 7-figure fine, what have you, it's going to involve falls of some way, shape, or form, trench collapses, something along those areas. So the big piece, and I've kind of hinted at it before, that you'll also notice with these items is none of these items come out of nowhere, right? It is willful and constant repeated ignorance of these items, or just lack of attention and awareness, right? And this is anecdotal and a narrative. I don't see any major fines that are levied in the neighborhood of the hundreds of thousands or $1 million fines or what have you for folks that have done everything that they need to do, and we just had an accident with somebody that wasn't paying attention and going through what they needed to do on their daily safety practices. You don't often see somebody that said, yeah, we did the JHA, somebody ignored it, and we got hit with $1 million fine. That's just not typically the way things operate. So if you want to protect yourself, and more importantly, what we're kind of losing out of here as we talk fines is protect your team, continued safety practices are going to be key. We're going to talk about a lot of those today when we talk Safety HQ. It's hard to get into particular items, right? Because all of you guys seem like you're from different trades and specialties as we go to, right? So an arc flash discussion may not be relevant to some folks, and like we kind of talked before, soil types and trench collapses may not be relevant to other folks as well too. So I'm going to use Safety HQ here as a guide to kind of walk us through some big picture ideas that we want to keep in the back of our mind as we improve and work on our safety practices as a whole, and put in order and put in place some best practices as well too. Now, granted, this is not going to include everything, right? There's going to be a whole bunch of parts and pieces in here that are Safety HQ specific. This is not intended to be a Safety HQ demo per se. If you did want a Safety HQ demo, I'm happy to help you. Give us a call, shoot us an email afterwards, and we can get into the actual specifics of the offering and how this software can help make your life quite a bit easier. But we are going to use it a little bit today as a guide so we can improve some of these practices as we go. So when we talk best practices, right? Obviously, OSHA has guidelines. It is somewhat difficult to follow the letter of the law in all situations. I realize that, right? I'm a pragmatic. I think we are all sitting here. There are certain situations in which we are not going to be perfect, but I think we need to prioritize what is most important for our teams as far as safety practices, procedures, what have you. And most importantly, you need to make this part of your weekly, daily routine, whatever that might be as well. The big caveat to this, or the big thing to keep in mind as we update all these items, is your team is not stupid. They might be kind of, they might joke a lot. They might not take things very seriously. You might have some folks that are a little bit slow on the uptake as a whole. You're going to have a mixed bag of all types of folks. But the biggest piece is they are not stupid. There's a lot of reasons why I mentioned that. Number one is having a strong safety program is reflective of you as a business and is really important when we talk about retention, right? So we're kind of veering away from OSHA a little bit, but your team is going to see that you guys have practices in place. Now, while they may complain and say, hey, this takes time, what have you, and part of that is making sure that these processes are simple, easy, and efficient. But the big piece is people don't want to work next to dangerous employees or folks that are not necessarily using discretion or being mindful of hazards and things along those lines. It is a safer team. It is a happier team. It is largely, there are a lot of data points that will also say that that team is going to stick around longer and will have better retention rates than those that are unsafe. But when I talk about, observation abilities of employees, if you will, they see the hazards that are on the job site. In most, if not all situations, employees have pointed out of major fines, I should say. Employees have pointed out hazards to either supervisors, management personnel, or in even some cases, inspectors. They see what's going on the job site. You guys see what's going on the job site, but it is your job, depending on what role you're in, and we got a lot of folks from a lot of backgrounds today, it is your job to make sure that they are aware of those risks, hazards, and concerns, and they are also aware of how we are going to address those, right? You cannot assume that they are going to notice all those items, but again, they are aware of those items, and taking the extra time, effort, and practices and processes to make sure that the team is aware of those and how we handle those, infinitely beneficial when it comes to staying OSHA compliant and keeping the team safe and aware. So making safety processes is step two, right? Step one is making sure you guys are, actually care and, you're on the webinar and taking some steps from here. But number two is actually having processes. If you are doing JHAs, and I see this all the time with clients, yeah, we do JHAs, but we just do them when our GC requires them, right? That's going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to show the team that you guys don't necessarily think that this is important on all jobs. Well, that's going to breed a culture of folks that are not necessarily focused on safety as a whole. Number two, that's going to go ahead and show that when we do go ahead and move to a job that does require some of these items, team's not going to be as practiced. There are additional fallouts or repercussions of that as well too. If you work with a general contractor and they see that you take your safety seriously, that is one less thing that they have to worry about, and they know that they can trust you. That is immensely beneficial to many of the folks that I talk to that have a strong safety program in place. That is a huge selling point for them when they're trying to work business, and more importantly, when they are winning repeated business with folks that take this very seriously. These GCs, especially large ones, guys, they don't want to hold your hands over safety. They want to know that you're going to be able to handle your business, and that is one item that they are essentially responsible for as well, that they don't have to worry about. So again, I mentioned I'm not going to give you a full demo of this today, but step number one, as far as making safety a process and safety a priority, is toolbox talks. You might call them tailgate talks. You might call them 1,000 other things. In Safety HQ, we have toolbox talks, 250 or so of them, English and Spanish, where these are accessible to all of your employees. You can allow them to select their own topics. You can also schedule these out for a future date as well. This is really handy as far as making that a process, right? I know not everyone in here has a dedicated safety manager. Everyone in here might not have a dedicated safety director. If you are managing safety, you might also finish this webinar and have to go process accounts receivable, right? Every office is shaped a little bit differently depending on who's involved. And making that process a priority and owned by somebody is critical. So even if that's not somebody's full job, make sure that safety is owned and that we do follow up on these things. Safety HQ makes that simple and easy by scheduling things out, right? So if I have 15 minutes, I can just go ahead and, 15 minutes is probably long. In 15 minutes, I could probably schedule the next 3 quarters worth of toolbox talks from my team. They will get the notifications at the date and times that you've selected, and you will get those responses as they are completed, right? They go through, they get notifications, and I'm just showing you this briefly, but they complete a toolbox talk. Great, I'm gonna pick my project. Even better, I can sign off on this as the foreman here, and then I'll pick pick some of my employees to be present on this toolbox talk as well too. So they can all sign off on this, great. And most importantly, this is making their life easier because they don't have to take this back to you. They hit submit, it's digitally organized, it's saved, your team can check in at any point and review how the team is doing. I'll take a quick pause there because this is critical, right? If you are having your team participate in safety activities and you do not follow up, the compliance from your team is going to continue to wane. They are not going to get better at making sure that they're actually paying attention to these items. I use the example all the time when I talk to folks. It's like homework, back when you were in high school or elementary school or whatever it was. If you knew that the teacher was going to assign homework and they weren't going to collect it, how many of us would have gone and done that homework? Probably not very many, right? So you need to make this a point that on a regular basis, we are reviewing the team's work. We are following up when they are not completing these items. So in this case, I have my team doing toolbox talks once per week. This will send them a notification to let them know that they got to get those toolbox talks completed and that we are paying attention and that does need to be handled. People do this on the other way too, right? Following up regularly is critical, but also going ahead and doing incentive programs is beneficial as well. You know your team really well. You know what's going to get them to, what's going to motivate them to participate or not participate in many of these things. Whether it's, the whip or, whether it's, the sugar on the other end, that's completely up to you as far as what works best for the team. I've seen it both ways in a combination. I think it's the carrot. I totally butchered that example, but yeah, you have it both ways. You can go from there. Thank you, James, in the comments. That was a great question. That was accurate. So yes, thank you. All of these toolbox talks are located right here. So date range, project, who completed them, what have you. You can pull these up at any time and share these with a customer or things along those lines if you want. I don't know if this is sharing on the screen, guys, because of the screen share, but you guys will have customizable to your company name, logos, PDFs, things like that, if you are using something like a Safety HQ. But regardless of what you're doing, make sure that you are doing regular toolbox talks and reviews. Now I'm going to touch on forms for a little bit, and then I think we're probably going to touch certifications. That might be the last things that we'll kind of discuss in this half hour that we have here today. But if you guys do have questions, I will try and save some time at the end. So if you do have some questions, please feel free to send those in the chat box. But as far as safety forms, I kind of hinted at this previously, right? If you guys are not used to doing safety forms, what kind of impression does that send to your team as far as the priority of the safety forms, right? Whether it's a JHA, site inspection, what have you. Doing these on a regular basis is critical to show the team that this is something that you need done on a regular basis. If safety forms and safety compliance only matters on certain occasions, well, guess what? Probably their attention to safety is probably going to also follow that sporadically as well too. Now, we really make an emphasis here at Safety HQ at making this simple and easy. So again, I'll pick a JHA, I can pick a project. All of our forms are fully customizable. That is really key here, guys, and I'll take a quick pause there. Whatever you guys do, don't inundate them with information. If you print off a JHA online and you give them a 15-page form that is mostly not relevant to the team, that's not very helpful. They're going to check out, they're going to pencil whip it. You are, again, showing them that safety is not really paramount to you guys. It is not super important because we're not even taking the time to make sure that these forms are tailored to the type of work that they're doing. In this case, I have daily tasks. I'm going to pick setup and load of materials. It is only going to show me hazards associated with setup and load of materials. I'm going to pick, fall protection related items. Great. And you notice here, it is only showing me fall protection related controls. It is keeping me nice and focused. The system is going to use logic to keep them on board here. We can take photos from our mobile device, phone, tablet, whatever we got out in the field. I'm on my laptop, so we got one of these fun stock images as an example. But this is really interactive, right? The best way to communicate some of these things is through pictures or images. So we can go ahead and kind of highlight some of these items. We'll keep this festive to Christmas here as we go. And then they can sign off on these documents as well too. This will all, in Safety HQ at least, this will tie back to the employee record, so we have that history. Whatever organization style you have, make sure that you're able to present them. If you do all these and they are saved or they are strewn around all over your office, that does you no good if OSHA comes through the door. Organization is really key for these items as you go. Again, we can see these by project date range, who submitted them when. We can also go ahead and see some certain items in here as far as who completed it, and also provide a nice professional looking PDF, company, date range, whatever we need on here as well too. So when it comes to forms, right, best practice here is that we want to make these relevant to the team, right? So even if you have to find something online, Safety HQ, these are fully customizable, and we do have templates based on specialty and trade to kind of help keep that focused on what your team needs. But if you are doing these right now, review what you have, review the responses, right? If there's a section that the team is always ignoring, or that they're not putting the time and attention into that you need, maybe it's time to review those forms and make sure that they are relevant, right? Many, if not all, of the issues that have been noticed have been highlighted either from a deficiency perspective from employees, inspectors, whomever before. So these are not, out of nowhere accidents that result in huge fines. Most of the time we have some history that is going to tell us that this is something that needs our time and attention. With that being said, right, you need practices and processes in place to follow through. I'm going to use Safety HQ as an example again, and I'm going to do a site inspection. But doing regular site inspections with your team is critical. Whether this is an expanded JHA, whether this is a separate site inspection, what have you, this really depends on your processes. If you have like a dedicated safety inspector, they need to be out there all the time. There is no excuse. If you have folks that are doing multiple items and safety is just one of their hats, maybe this is something that the foreman or project manager, or even superintendent kind of takes on as a responsibility, but make sure that somebody in the back office is following up on these things too. So that's really critical as we proceed too. As we go through, I use a quick example here as I'm doing my site inspection. First aid kit's not on the site. Great, perfect example. That's something that can relate to everybody and something that we need to address. Having a highlighted or marked deficiency that you guys do not address or mitigate in any way, shape, or form is asking for a huge fine, guys. That is when we're going to get willful and repeated or what have you. You're going to get all those kind of keywords in the heavy issued fines. Having an ability to notate or at least identify hazards on the job site. In this case, no first aid kit, it's a deficiency. We have noted it. This will automatically route to the appropriate parties if we'd like. They will all get a notification. We could take photos of this. We could even assign it a due date. Again, this is a Safety HQ feature specifically. But this system will now go ahead and notify all the appropriate parties. Rick and Tom and Linda and all the people that maybe need to get this first aid kit out there are going to get a notification. And in real time, we can see what deficiencies have not been resolved, maybe either by priority or by project or by due date, things along those lines too. So this is critical, guys. I don't want to say you shouldn't, you should ignore deficiencies if you don't plan on fixing them. You should highlight them and you should fix them. That is the right answer for both of these. But you are asking for a recipe for a disaster if you are highlighting deficiencies that you are not resolving as you go from there too. So maybe even bigger than the identification is the actual resolution. Make sure you have smooth and streamlined processes so that all of the appropriate parties are made aware, and that we can get these resolved, followed up on. Whether it's a workflow, we can set up automated workflows in here. Whether you guys have some kind of list somewhere, heck, I don't even care if you do this on a dry erase board at the main office, somewhere that shows the deficiencies and shows that you guys are actively working on getting these resolved is absolutely critical. So make sure you have that. We also have additional data and leading indicators, things like that, trend analysis, all those types of things as well too. But again, this is not a Safety HQ demo. I would be happy to do that another time if you'd like, but there's a lot of other things that we can get into in these fully customizable forms. But I will wrap this up here today as we kind of come down the home stretch with certifications and lessons. Make sure you have a method of tracking certifications and trainings, right? Toolbox talks are good. They are continued education. They are not intended to replace formal certifications and trainings for many topics, right? A half-hour toolbox talk with the guys on fall protection does not replace XYZ particular training. If you talk about first aid CPR, that does not make your team first aid CPR certified. Another key item that you will notice, and I read through these all the time too, is employees were not trained or certified. This is often, even an initial employee, and we don't talk about this a lot either, but if you initially hire somebody, take them through your safety program. Show them what matters to them. Oftentimes, you'll see folks that are involved in accidents have no training whatsoever. That is one of the first things that OSHA is going to look for. Hey, show me the training that this employee has. Oh, they had no training. You put an untrained employee on the job site and they were involved in an accident. It sounds pretty no-brainer, guys. That seems like something that would happen, right? If you put somebody out there that's untrained or what have you, I know it's tough to find folks and we're rushing to get them out into the field. Safety HQ has some tools where we can deliver trainings electronically and require them to take quizzes, review videos, things along those lines. Great. However you do it, make sure your team is certified. And make sure your team is trained in the particular areas, even if it is just if you work in an area without very formal certifications, even if it is just your safety processes and procedures, that will help you immensely in avoiding potential OSHA fines, damages, things along those lines as well too. As far as certifications, tracking and managing, that's all great if you got them. How do you know if you need more of them or who has what? You need some kind of method of reviewing this, right? You cannot leave this up to the employees. I hear a lot of folks that leave this up to their employees and say, yeah, they know what certifications they should have and they will stay up to date on it. You are absolutely wrong. That is not a good strategy. It might work in some particular cases and some clients that we've spoken with, but it is absolutely critical that you are a watchful eye because ultimately you are responsible for their trainings. you can see, at least in Safety HQ, who's expiring in the near future on what particular trainings. You know, if I'm doing a first aid CPR training, let's grab everybody who might need an update. I can get automated notifications. I can review this in a big picture format. I can also add these from the field. These come in automatically from the lessons area as well too. But it is key to make sure that not only we have those trainings, we are up to date on those trainings, and the employees have the ability to present them on the site, right? Having a license for XYZ or, you know, a certification for this is great. If they can't present it, should you be inspected? That's going to hurt. It's not going to be hurt as bad as not having them inspected at all. You can always produce that a little bit later. But be mindful of that, guys, that although I know these are all adults, at least they should be, make sure that you are giving it a second eye. You are giving them the tools they need to continue and follow up with their certifications. Because at the end of the day, I know these could be some long, exhausting days here too. The last thing that they are thinking about is, oh, am I up to date on my XYZ certification? Giving them an extra hand shows, again, not only that you care about these items and that is important to your business as a whole, but it also shows that you care about them, right? It shows that their safety is important to you, and you will be shocked at how far that goes, even from like a production and a productivity standpoint. It's really critical. So we are just coming up to the half-hour mark, guys. I went really quickly. We did not get into a lot of details here, and there's a lot of questions here that I will not be able to hit. But if you are interested in a personalized Safety HQ demos to talk about our customized forms, toolbox talks, corrective actions, our full SDS library, incident reporting, even equipment, which we didn't talk about today, feel free to give us a shout. Maybe I can I'll pull this up real quick. Give me an email below, give us a call. We are happy to work with you, or at least just, you know, bounce some ideas off you if you did have some questions that we can help you with. Happy to do so. But thank you guys all for joining today. I really appreciate you guys taking some time during your lunch, and we hope to talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.